Welcome back. So, you've navigated the legal maze and you've got your land. Now for the really fun part, turning that empty plot into a living, breathing school. We're diving into what I think is the most exciting step, planning the actual layout and infrastructure.
But yeah, where do you even start? It's a huge question, right? You're staring at this piece of land, dreaming of a vibrant, safe place for kids to learn. But what comes first? The classrooms, the playground? It can feel totally overwhelming. Don't worry, we are going to break it all down, piece by piece.
Here's how we're going to tackle it. First, we'll talk about why this blueprint is so incredibly important. Then, we'll get into the core principles of good school design. After that, we'll map out all the essential spaces you'll need and cover those critical behind-the-scenes systems. And finally, we'll walk through how to turn that beautiful plan into a reality.
Okay, let's jump right into Section 1. Before we even think about drawing a single line on a page, we need to really understand why this planning stage is, without a doubt, one of the most crucial parts of the entire journey.
So what are we really talking about when we say layout and infrastructure? Well, think of the layout as the school's skeleton. It's how all the physical spaces connect and flow together. The infrastructure, that's the nervous system. It's the power, the water, the safety systems, everything that makes the building function. And for a school to work, they have to be designed in perfect harmony.
A great blueprint is so much more than just a map of rooms. First and foremost, it's about safety. We're talking clear fire exits and secure entry points. It also has a huge impact on learning. You'd be surprised how much good natural light and ventilation can boost a student's focus. Of course, there's compliance. Boards like CBSE or IB have really strict rules about facilities. And finally, thinking about future growth now is going to save you a world of pain and money later on.
All right, with that foundation set, let's get into the golden rules of school design. These are the core ideas that should guide every single decision you make from here on out.
Think of these 5 rules as your guiding star. Number 1, always be student-centered. Every choice should prioritize the kid's comfort and experience. 2, smart zoning. It's just common sense, right? You don't put the library right next to the playground. 3, circulation. Kids need to move around safely, so wide corridors are a must. 4, flexibility. Can your assembly hall also be used for exams or an indoor badminton court? It should. And 5, future-proof your design. Know exactly where that new science wing is going to go in 10 years before you even dig the foundation.
Okay, principles are great, but let's get down to brass tacks. We're moving from the why to the what. Let's start mapping out the actual rooms and spaces that every school absolutely has to have.
Now, this list covers the essentials for pretty much any school, but the magic is in the placement. Your admin and reception have to be right at the entrance. That's your control center. It's a great idea to group classrooms by age, creating, a junior wing and a senior wing. And you want your medical room to have super easy access from the outside, just in case an ambulance ever needs to arrive quickly.
Let's zoom right in on the most important space of all, the classroom. It really comes down to 4 steps. First, figure out your capacity. That'll tell you how big the room needs to be. Second, optimize the layout. Windows for natural light aren't just a nice-to-have, they're critical for a positive learning environment. Third, pick the right furniture, something comfy but also built to last. And fourth, think about creating little zones within the room, maybe a reading nook to cater to different activities. And here's something I absolutely cannot stress enough. Before you fall in love with any design, you must check the specific rules from your affiliation board and your local government. They have very precise, non-negotiable requirements for everything from room size to how many toilets you need. Getting this wrong can literally stop your project dead in its tracks.
So, we've planned out the visible parts of the school. Now let's talk about the invisible stuff, the critical systems that bring the building to life and, more importantly, keep everyone safe. This is the infrastructure that you don't see, but you definitely notice if it wasn't there.
When you're budgeting for these systems, it helps to think in 2 buckets. On one side, you have your day 1 must-haves, things like fire safety, clean water, backup power, and basic security. You simply cannot open your doors without these. Then, on the other side, you have your future-proof goals, smart investments like solar panels or rainwater harvesting that will save you money in the long run. Get your must-haves locked in first, then plan for those awesome upgrades.
All right, the blueprint is done, the systems are planned, we are in the home stretch now. This last section is all about the practical steps that take you from a plan on paper to the very first day of school.
This timeline gives you a pretty realistic look at how it all unfolds. It all kicks off with hiring a good architect. And notice how applying for approvals happens way before any real construction begins. And that last step, it's maybe the most important. Before you open, you have to test everything and run mock drills. Make sure your staff knows exactly what to do in an emergency.
So where does the money go? This is a fantastic breakdown. Look at that! The biggest slice, 35%, goes to safety and sanitation. When you add that to the core building and classrooms, you're looking at 65% of your total budget right there. And please, whatever you do, do not skip that last slice. That 10% contingency fund, that is your lifeline for all the unexpected costs that always pop up.
Finally, let's just quickly run through the classic mistakes so you can avoid them. You know, these things usually happen when people ignore those core principles we talked about. Putting the playground next to the library, that's a classic zoning failure. Buying land that's too small, you forgot to future-proof. And not including things like ramps from day one, that's not being student-centered, and it's going to cost you a fortune to fix later.
So, as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with one final question to think about. It's one thing to design a school that just ticks all the boxes to pass an inspection, but it's another thing entirely to design a school with a true vision. So ask yourself, are you just building for today, or are you creating a foundation that will serve generations of students to come?